accuse me of talking softly, so that works out. I just give you a very brief summary. My wife and I worked in China as missionary teachers for 4 years. They don't ask you to come or allow you to come as missionaries, but if you'll come as an English teacher, then they'll let you come, and while we're there, we'll have a chance to share with them, and I'll tell you more about that. I forgot to include a picture, but Mr. J knows a thing or two about this. How long were you? 2 years?
Yes.
In Changsha, China. He did the same kind of thing with the same ministry that we work with. So a little bit about our mission to China. Greetings from your family on the other side of the world. My grandchildren would say, Papa lives on the other side of the world. I tell them, no, I live in China. You live on the other side of the world. It is literally the other side of the world. Their time over there is PM, whatever yours is here at AM, and reverse. These are a group of people that came and studied with us and worshiped with us on Sunday morning. Those other individual pictures were some of the small individual group. The challenge before us as Christians is how to share the gospel with the people of China. And it is a unique challenge, but there are doors of opportunity the Lord has opened for us, and we'll share with you a little bit about that. Population of China, right now about 1.4 billion. Have you heard there are a lot of people in China? Anybody heard that? Okay. To say there are a lot of people at 1.4 billion is not very helpful. So let me help you get a grasp of what that means when you're talking about dealing with this kind of population. If you took everyone from South America and shipped them to the moon, and then you went to North America and shipped everyone to the moon from North America, you could go to China and replace every person on both continents by moving people from China. And what would be the situation then? There would still be more people in China than there are in America. So if you think about that you could replace everybody on both continents and they would still have more people than we do in our country, then you realize this is a huge number of people. So it's a great challenge, but it's also a great job, but it's a great opportunity. The best illustration I've heard of this, a sales manager told me this story years ago, and I've never forgotten it. 2 shoe salesmen were sent by their companies to colonial Africa. And in colonial days, they took a while to get there, but when they arrived, one got off and looked around and immediately sent back a cable to his company and said, "Get me out of here, this is hopeless. There's nobody here that wears shoes." The other one had a little different perspective. He sent back a cable and he says, "This is a fantastic opportunity. Nobody here has shoes." So, depending on whether you look at it as a nation where there is very little religion and not much encouragement for it, it might seem like not such a great opportunity. The other hand, they are searching for meaning and understanding, and there's more interest in religion as a general category than most people in America would know. Today, like the Lord's Messenger of the Church of Philadelphia, he says, "I've set before you an open door." And it really is an open door. It may be a back door, but it is an open door. China will not let us come. They're closed to missionaries. When I first applied for a visa to go to China as a tourist, I listed that I was the minister for the Dover, Delaware Church of Christ. And the visa company sent me back a message the next day or a day or two later and said, we took it to the embassy, they wouldn't even accept the application because you're preaching. They sent it back and said, you need to redefine your job and your employer. I learned Chinese like to play word games. So I resubmitted my visa application. I became the counselor for the Dover Community Group. Bingo, I had my visa and I've been in and out of China for the past 15 years. But one phrase, one wording didn't work, the other didn't bother. So they invite us to come as English teachers. But in the quiet of our home, we have an opportunity to share the gospel. This all started because a brother who was interested in mission work, was working some areas, and one of his mission friends said, I think if you go to China and teach English, you might be able to share the gospel. So he decided to try it. He went for a couple of years, and he came back and he said, who's telling the church in America we can get into China and share the gospel this way? And found out nobody was. Benny Mullins was an elder at the Spanish Fort, Alabama church. So in 1993, they started this ministry called China Now. One of the reasons it's not more commonly known is because we avoid advertising in national publications and things, especially those that are put on the internet. Because if you can find it here, they can find it in China. Understand, what we do is no secret in China. I remember one of the elders of the church that supported us loved to tell the people that Ron does cloak and dagger work in China. I said, no, it's no secret. The Chinese government knows we're English teachers. We've been sending people now for 29 years to China. They teach the gospel to their students in their homes quietly, but I guarantee you nothing has gone on in China for 29 years with foreigners meet with Chinese students that the Chinese government doesn't know about. We had one of the Chinese brothers that came to study with us call me one day and he said, Ron said, the police called me and they said they want to come talk to me about the meetings we're having at your house. And they're going to come see me, pick me up tomorrow. So I said, okay. He said, what should I tell them? I said, Lee, we're Christians. We're sort of committed to not lying. So I'd recommend you just tell them the truth. Whatever they ask you, answer the question. But when you answer the question, stop talking. Tell the answer to the question they ask you, but don't start saying a lot of other things. You might say things you wish you hadn't. Anyway, but tell them the truth. Called me back the next day. It really surprised me. He said they called me again and said, there are 4 policemen coming to interview me. And they're afraid that 4 policemen coming to my apartment would frighten my landlord. And I assure you that's most likely going to happen. So he said they want to pick me up and take me to lunch. So, wow, Chinese police are more generous than I expected. Called me back later in the afternoon. I said, how'd you go? And he said, well, they asked me quite a few questions, and I just told them the truth. And he said when we finished, they said, well, you seem to be very honest with us, and you're not trying to hide anything, and so we really appreciate that. He said, but we want to come to the meeting ourselves. I said, what did you tell them? He said, I told them, okay. Is that all right? I said, well, what were you going to do? Tell the Chinese police, no, you cannot come to the meetings? That was not going to work. So I said, fine. He said, go send the youngest one because he looks just like a university student. So that night he came, he sat over there by Lee, didn't say a word. And afterwards I talked to Lee, said, what did he think? He said, well, he found it very interesting and said he wants to come back. So Lee, tell you what, you invite him every time we have a meeting until he either decides to become a Christian or quits. He came for 7 times to sit in our study. And understand, we had about 25 students all around our living room, crowded in. We sang songs, Christian songs, we did Bible studies, we did prayers, we did exactly what we did when he wasn't there. And after 7 weeks, he went away and he said to me, he said, well, this seems very nice. I think this would be very good for Chinese people. That was the last we ever heard of it. So while we don't go out and do public announcements and put up signs and things like that, as long as we communicate person to person, it's really surprising at the freedom and the opportunity to reach people in China. So since 1993, we have sent 850 people to China. There are about 80 of them still there. Some have been there for 10 years, 15 years, some up to almost 20 years now. We have new people go most every year. The last year since COVID, we could not. This fall, we trained a new group to go, some this fall and some in the spring semester. But we're now able to begin to send teachers back. China's very eager to have people come and teach English in China. Every student in school studies English every year from at least middle school up and more in the grade school, and I've been in kindergarten classes where they were teaching oral English. They want their people to know English. Xi Jinping is kind of restricting that in some ways, but it's not going to make a huge difference. There's just too much appetite in China to learn English. English is the international language of business. They know that to be successful in the world, on the world stage, they need good English speakers. But most of them learned their English from Chinese teachers who learned their English from Chinese teachers. Any of you ever studied Spanish in school, high school? Okay. If you study Spanish in high school from an American teacher who learned Spanish from an American teacher, don't think anybody in Mexico is going to understand a word you say, or vice versa. So they have a word for that. When Chinese teach English, they call it Chinglish. And it works out pretty well. So you have a store, the sign says unsightly. Would you open a store in America and call it unsightly? You think nobody would come except people who were curious about what was so unsightly. What they mean is things you don't see very often. But there's a big difference between saying rare and unsightly in English. Chinese people do mix up the meanings because both of them just mean things you don't see very often. You don't speak Chinese? Okay. No Chinese, no problem. We teach English majors who already know English, so we don't have to speak Chinese to teach at English in the university. We're teaching them and helping them improve their oral English so they don't make the kind of mistakes that they make when they learn it from teachers that don't know how English really works. In our apartments, this is a group that we sit and we studied and sang and had great Bible studies, and many of them became Christians. People ask about, can you teach about Christianity? They assume perhaps that we teach, as some places in the world do, English by using the Bible. In China, that is not going to happen. The Chinese universities don't allow you to use the Bible as a textbook to teach English. But American culture is unbelievably popular in China. At Christmas time, you go down the streets of our town and the Super Walmart, and it's there, has a 50-foot Christmas tree, but not just the Walmart. Every Chinese store too will either have a little Christmas tree or decorations or Santa Claus pictures. They're everywhere. They blare Christmas music in both English and Chinese. And I've heard both the Jingle Bells and Away in a Manger and those sort of things. I've heard them on the streets of China because it's part of American culture, and American culture is very popular in China. So at Christmas, we would explain about Christmas in America, and they do something in class in China that Americans would get very unhappy about. They love to do what we call reading in unison. Can you imagine a preacher getting up and saying to the congregation, open your Bible to Acts chapter 2, we're going to read the first 10 verses in unison. Everybody in the house, the whole church is going to read it out loud at the same time. Well, most of us would think this is not a very effective way to do it. And American students would, I think, rebel. But in China, they read out loud in unison all the time. That's much of their educational approach. So we use this as an opportunity to practice our English, not to preach. To practice our English, we put this up on a PowerPoint, and the class read the story of the birth of Jesus out loud together. And I had Chinese teachers that have come in and sat in on this, and they said, I never heard that story before. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Guess what we did at Easter time? We'd show them slides about Easter bunnies and Easter eggs and all that and explain things about the children. But we said the real idea here is about this story from the Bible. So again, we would read the story of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus from the Bible because it was a way of practicing our oral English. So opportunities are there if you just have a chance to take advantage of it. Now, the great thing too is you don't need any special skills to do this. You don't need any special training. You don't have to have a special degree. We teach the people in the university. A very small percentage of Chinese people ever go to university. These are the people that are going to influence the culture and society and the government in the years to come. These Chinese students After we leave, we cannot go into all the parts of China because we work only with university students. Besides, most of the people in China do not speak English. And so we couldn't communicate with them if we got there. But these people speak Chinese very well. So once they graduate, they'll scatter out all over the country and they'll be able to share the gospel with people in Chinese, people we could never touch. So it's not like you go into a country where you set up congregations and you try to build from that, and that's a wonderful thing. But in China, it's a different situation. It's a chance for us to teach people. Some of these folks right now are very committed leaders. One of these brothers down here on the bottom in the middle preaches now for a home church, a house church of about 50 to 60 people. He's been working with that congregation for almost 10 years now, and they have a great group. Others are involved with other house church groups. I want to show you this video in just a minute. Okay, this is a young lady named Katie, and she's going to tell the story about how she searched for God. And this is the kind of experience they have. So, okay, are you ready to start the video up there for me? Can you start this video? Who's up there? Okay, can you turn the volume up? I can hear it, but I don't think anybody else can. Can you hear it?
Most Chinese people are atheists, and so was I. I started to know about God around the age of 9 through my mother. Even though I knew about God, I didn't know about Jesus. My mother had told me about God, and she even asked me to pray with her. When we prayed together, I didn't know what I was doing or why. It was not something that I made a part of my life, because I was doing it for her, and my faith never developed. All through middle school and high school, I was taught that there was no God. My fellow classmates and I simply accepted Marxism and the idea that evolution explained where we come from, and that there was no need for a creator. When I began attending college, I knew there was something more than I could see with my eyes. I began thinking and searching for meaning in my life. My sophomore year, I was walking on campus and met an American teacher named Katie. Being an English major, I wanted to practice my English, so I approached her. I asked her typical beginner questions like, what's her name and where are you from? That quick exchange began a deeper relationship that would eventually bring me from darkness to light. As our relationship grew, I began to see things in Katie's life that were different from other people that I knew. She would do me favors without expecting anything in return. And when we would eat together, she would pray and thank God for His blessings. These things had a tremendous impact on me. I began to think that Katie might be able to help me with my search for meaning in my life. She gave me many books to read that helped bring me to a better understanding of God, like The Case for Christ and Mere Christianity. At those Bible studies, I was able to meet some Chinese Christians. I could see that Christ had impacted their lives in a way nothing else could, and I wanted that. In March of 2010, I was baptized and began my life as a new creation. Sometimes I think about my life and where I would be if I didn't know Jesus. I look around and see so many people chasing after things that won't matter in the end. They look at their lives and think everything's okay, but the truth is, it isn't. Most of them have never heard about Jesus, and they don't realize they're lost. I feel that they shouldn't be deprived of that right. God said that we should love others as He has loved us. I want to tell others about the love of Christ, but sometimes I feel overwhelmed at the huge population of the non-believers in China. Even though it is a difficult task, I know that if God is for us, then no one can stand against us.
Okay, thank you, brother. I'm reminded when I think about her experience and some of the others about the passage in the Bible that talks about the Christian virtues and all, and it uses this phrase, against such things there is no law. So the Chinese police, finding out that we're teaching people about love and mercy and caring about the poor and helping people, they come back with that response. This is not what they expected, and they said this would be good for Chinese people. And I remembered that phrase, against such things there is no law. So this young lady was trying to find some meaning for life. She figured there had to be more than just living and dying and that's all it is. There needed to be a better explanation. She's searching. The young man she was eating with is Kuang Yu. Kuang Yu became a Christian our first year in China at a nearby university, but we traveled over there and worked with them, and some of the Chinese brothers had been taught by a teacher that was previous to me, one of my dear friends that had been in China for 4 years before we went to work with him. And some of those Chinese teachers, men had become Christians, and they had been studying, and they had become very good teachers. We would meet 3 times a week in our apartment, but I'd only teach once every other week. I would have the Chinese brothers teach because I wanted the Chinese people to hear it from Chinese men. So I contacted the university and said, we have some Chinese men who can share with your students. So we went over, visited, and Kuang Yu was a new student there, and very quickly after that became Christian. He has now finished 4 years of studying at Harding University and is at the graduate school and is preparing to go back to China with his wife. He wants to spend his time serving, and not in America, but in China. And many of these people have come from these groups and have become very dedicated Christians. This is Li Hanjing. He's the one the police wanted to talk to. I baptized one person in China, and that was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake to get baptized, but it was a mistake I did it. I just didn't think. I was new, and a young man wanted to be baptized, so I did it. And I realized the minute that we baptized, I wasn't going to do that. Because we didn't want them to build ties to us, we wanted them to build ties to other Chinese Christians. From that point on, when a Chinese person would be baptized, I'd call Wang Huchang or Li Hanjing or one of the other brothers. They would baptize them. And so as a result, we tried to encourage them to think of their Christian faith and life as a Chinese experience to be shared with their own people. Hundreds are converted every year from teachers that go and study in small groups and do. And this is Wang Huchang. Wang had studied with an American Christian some years ago and learned English, but he wasn't interested in Christianity. He heard about my friend Gary, his son, a co-worker said, my son goes to an American's house and they talk English a lot. His English is really improved. So they studied the Bible, but anybody can come. So Wang took the family vehicle and pedaled across town. His vehicle at that point was a bicycle. Later he got fancy and got an electronic bike. Wang came over, knocked at the door and said, I understand you have meetings and you speak in English and I want to learn English better. Can I come? Gary said, sure, come on. So after about 3 or 4 months, Wang was there and Gary said, Wang, you've been coming for a while now. Are you thinking about becoming a Christian? No, I just want to learn English better. Okay, he said, you're welcome. Well, every 3 months or so, Gary would touch base again. And you think about, no. But after about a year, one day, Wang knocked at Gary's door, and he said, I've decided I want to be a Christian. And he was baptized. Wang, later his wife May and his daughter San San were also baptized. This is Wang baptizing a man who is 73 at this point in life. Wang has led a house church group in his house for the last 15 years. And so people who don't think they want to become Christians when they learn more can make a huge impact in China. I talked with Wang. WeChat is an app that allows us to talk by Wi-Fi. From here to America, we have phone calls for free, so it's really a wonderful thing. This is a group of those people that meet at Wang's house. He started in 2006 and have worked with us for years before that. The commitment to go to China is for 1 academic year. And at the end of that year, they will come and ask you, would you like to come back another year? And you can say yes or no. In this picture, you have a lot of the Americans that work together in the city called Jingzhou. And you have also some of the Chinese brothers that were very involved and committed with us. If I remember correctly, the young man down here with the frizzy hair right in front of Gary with the red collar married Gary's daughter a few years later, and she and he are still there in China serving. People go for one academic year, but many people stay much longer. We have people there now who have been there up to 20 years. The ministry of the Churches of Christ, we send willing Christians to China to share the gospel. That's our focus. So far, more than 850 have gone, as we mentioned. What we do to help is to inform churches and university students, doing presentations like this at congregations and going to Christian school, university campuses and sharing the opportunity. And that's where most of our teachers come from. We inform the churches and students, we recruit the missionary teachers, and then we help to prepare people to be trained and go. We find a local job for them in China. These are not the kind of things the average person would know how to do. We've been doing it now for almost 30 years. So we know how to contact universities, find them, give them teaching resources, help them with their visas and passports and all of that kind of thing. Plus we do regular communications, and those of us who are too old to teach anymore often go back and visit China. We try to go twice a year for about a month at a time, visit various universities and the teachers, encourage them, get to know the students, and also get to visit some of our former students that are now out working with churches scattered around China. We do this training. It's a 1-week orientation, and we cover all kinds of things from Chinese food, how to deal with the Chinese government officials, how to support them, and they will support you. And we just try to help them learn and prepare how to do it. Something too about how to teach the classes, how to communicate with the teachers, and build relationships. This is a group of people, usually 4 to 6, are always working nearby one another. Now there are a couple of surprises about this. You may be surprised. China will pay you to come and do this. People think, and one of the reasons I always thought about doing foreign missions, but going out and raising all the money and everything, it's just huge obstacles, and I just never got into it. But when I learned about this, it changed everything. They will pay your round-trip airfare. They will provide a furnished apartment. They will pay all of the utilities, and it is fully furnished as well, and they'll pay you a monthly salary quite adequate to live in China. Quite literally, the initial investment is usually around $3,000 because we have to pay for the first round-trip airfare ourselves. At the end of the school year, they will pay us back. They give us reimbursements for that money. Then if you go back again, you just recycle that money every year, and when you come home, that initial investment is returned to you. The salary is, you're not going to get rich, but we have many couples who live on one salary and save the other. And some of the individuals who are single, if they're a bit frugal, they also come back having saved money. So it really is not something we have to raise a ton of money to go. We help with all of those plans. What's required is, first of all, a desire to share the gospel, and you have to be qualified. And to qualify, you just have to be a native English speaker, have to have a bachelor's degree in any subject, does not need to be English or education, and be between the ages of 21 and 65. And that's pretty much it. And of course, the desire to share the gospel is at the heart of what we're looking for. Now, those of you who have the clipboards, you can start them. If one of you starts the one up at the front and the one at the back, if you'd start it in the back. If you're interested in knowing more about the China ministry, we have 2 ways. Number one, we send out newsletters every few weeks. And then the other thing is we give people an opportunity to go to China and do this. So if you would like to have the newsletter that comes by email, and we don't use this for bugging people about giving money and raising money. This is just to inform people about what's happening if they're interested. Put your name, your email, write it very carefully. I get about 15% of the requests, and I can't make out what they've said, and I'm not sure they ever get a newsletter. So please print it very carefully. Better than I print, maybe that'll help. The other thing is, if you're interested in more information about teaching in China, Then same thing, only mark under the teach information or information about teaching, mark that, and we will see that you get that information as well. God was looking for a messenger, and he said, Isaiah said, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, who will go? Who will go for us? And he said, here am I, send me. And so what do we need more than anything else to evangelize more people in China? One simple thing. We need more Christians who will say, here am I, send me. And these are some of the folks who have gone. You can see singles, families, young people, those of us who are no longer young, all of that sort of thing. Who goes to China? Well, 49ers, that was us when we went. Recent graduates, families, we've had people to go. Jay, you'd be amazed, we had one recently, took 5 children to China. All of them blonde-headed. And I said the Chinese people are going to rub those kids' heads raw. They've never seen blonde-headed people, and they always want to feel the blonde hair. And the black folks that go and work with us, and many of them have gone, they have the same problem. They want to feel the black folks' hair because they've never seen black hair before. So you have some unusual experiences, but if you're not touchy about this sort of thing, it gives you a great opportunity to build relationships and to make contact with people. This couple worked with us, and the little baby was born there in China. We have a brother who is now working with the university down in Chattanooga and a mission program to foreign students who come in there. He and his wife worked with us. They have 3 sons, all born in China. And when their first son was born in Jingzhou, where we were, they put it on the news about the American baby, first American baby ever born in Jingzhou. Jingzhou is a small city of about 1 million people. Now, you can join the circle of people who've gone to China if you would like to. We would love to be able to help you in any way we can. A couple of more things. Please pray for these things. Missionaries all around the world, not just China. One of the reasons I love to do this is because I hope it stirs interest in and commitment to missions wherever they are. And to people that you know that are working and want to work, I hope that this will help to encourage more interest in that. But for all the missionary teachers in China, pray for them. They face some unique opportunities and some unique challenges. We need more people willing to go to China, so pray about that. And then especially pray for the Chinese Christians. There are, surprisingly, officially approved Protestant churches and Catholic churches in China. They're often huge. They have in our city, you drove off the interstate, you see a giant cross standing way up in the air, and that is the approved Protestant church in China. But most of the Christians do not go to the government, what they often refer to as the government churches. Somewhat of a misnomer, but they understand they mean government sanctioned. Most of them worship in small house church groups. Like Lee works with a house church group, about 50 or 60 people. Wong has a group of about 35, 40 in his house church that meet in his apartment. He sends me pictures back occasionally of them baptizing somebody in his home, and they have a big tall trash can, and they baptize them vertically. You probably have never seen anybody baptized vertically, but it works for them, and they're very creative at finding ways to make these things happen. So, thank you very much for your interest in China, for the opportunity to be here. I think we're probably approaching the quit time. I'll let you wave at me, or you can tell me, cut it off when you're ready. If you have a question or two, I'll be glad to answer them if we have them. And yes, please pass out the information sheets if you have those as well. And if somebody, she's already got one, she doesn't need it. If somebody will collect the clipboards there at the back for me, I would appreciate that. Anyone have a question you'd like to know more about China or what we're doing or anything like that? First one's always hardest one to get. Yes, sir.
Is the recent political atmosphere changing things there?
Okay, a little bit louder. I'm old and don't hear well.
Is the recent political atmosphere changing things there?
Okay, I think you're asking me about the political situation, how it affects our work. Okay, first of all, we don't discuss and we don't answer political questions in China. In the English Quarter, they ask us questions sometimes about what do you think about the Communist Party or what do you think about the Chinese government? And I just simply tell them, I don't run America, you don't run China, and we're not into politics. That's not what we're about. So we really don't get into that. Obviously, we have to deal with how it impacts us, but we aren't trying to stir up unrest in China, which is one of the reasons when the police came to our apartment, they went away saying this is good, it'd be good for Chinese people. They found out we're trying to teach them to be good people and help them, and they saw that the things we were teaching would make good citizens in China without stirring up unrest, and that's not our mission. So we really try to stay clear of the political arguments and debates and frustrations. We're not unaware of them or insensitive to them, it's just we can't change them. So I think that's what you asked me about. Close enough, if not, corner me later.
He asked about present time.
Okay, well, and that's when we were there, but of course the present time, Xi Jinping is trying to change some things in China. When we were there, you could order Bibles online. Xi Jinping stopped all of that. And he's trying to restrict some things. On the other hand, you may hear about the government tearing down church buildings. Some house churches get to be 300-400. I've heard of them 800 people strong. They go out and build a building. And you've heard about perhaps the government sending in the bulldozers and bulldozing down their churches. That happens in China. But remember, whatever you hear about China is probably true somewhere in China. And most of the time, if you get the whole story, what's happened is they had a church building, they've been meeting there for years, they got 400 or 500 people, things are going great. But they decide, we want a cross on our church so the world knows we're Christian. So they put up the cross. The government comes and says, take down the cross, you can't do that. And they decide, we want it, so they get their people to line up around the building where they bring the bulldozers to keep them from getting it. People don't keep bulldozers from getting through. So if you don't challenge the government, and if you try to work as cooperatively as you can with the government, they usually leave these groups alone. Now that's been the experience of the past. What it will be in the next few years as Xi Jinping maybe solidifies more power and opposition, I don't know. But I've heard of 2 churches in Beijing. One had 1,000 people, one had 800. 1,000 people decided they wanted to build a church, and they said to the government, we want official approval as a church. They've grown to be 1,000 people without government approval. What's the problem? Just keep doing what you've been doing. But when they said to the government, we want your approval as a church, the government says, no, you can't build the building you want to build. You can't keep renting the house or the place where you met. They went to the people who rented, said you can't rent to them anymore. They went out and had their services in a public park. They thought, we can fix this. The police showed up and arrested their leaders. The other church of 800 didn't argue with the government, didn't ask anything, and the government never bothered them. So it's really a kind of a thing where if they will just keep to sharing the gospel and doing what they're doing and not think they need to look like American churches with buildings and crosses and things, then they can usually manage to keep going pretty well. Now that's been our experience. What the future will hold, I'm not a prophet, nor the son of a prophet, so I don't know. Okay, thank you. Mom hears better than I do, so she kind of steered it. Okay, we heard the buzzer.